Hey everyone, Metagross Freak here, taking a look today at Transformers, Robots in Disguise, Warrior Class Blastwave. Blastwave is a character that is kind of a filler character that only appeared in one episode of Robots in Disguise. He was a kind of a shoot first, ask questions later bounty hunter who was hunting down Nitra, who was a kind of a classmate of Strongarm in the Autobot Academy. And it turns out Blastwave is also an Autobot. His job was to hunt down Nitra because she was basically she had gone corrupt. And as you can probably tell by comparing the artwork on the box here compared to the actual figure, there are some differences. For the most part, Blastwave is on his model, his animation model, is for the most part a recolor of Megatronus, aka the Fallen. So for the most part, other than his face and his Autobot decals, he's mostly just a repaint. The figure, however, is very different. There's a number of parts that have been remolded. Basically, the only things that are the same are the legs and the transformation. Most of it has been remolded. But he turns into a futuristic tank of unknown origin. And of course, he is just like all the other Robots in Disguise figures. He is a warrior class, which is the equivalent of a deluxe class. And in 13 steps, he turns from Blastwave, who's kind of a samurai, into this tank. Now, if you're thinking, hey Meta, this doesn't look like Blastwave, this looks like Bludgeon, well, you're actually quite right. This figure was basically designed to be the Autobot equivalent of Bludgeon. And for Robots in Disguise, he actually has a repaint in the form of Bludgeon. Ironically enough, Bludgeon and Blastwave are basically remolds of Megatronus, but the Transformers Prime model of Bludgeon was actually a remold of Beast Wars Shockwave. So poor Bludgeon can't get a unique figure of his own. It's always remolds. Anyway, let's get into this figure. I liked the fact that in the episode he appears in, he uses Cybertronian sign language. I studied sign language in college, so I think characters that use sign language in TV shows are pretty neat. So anyway, let's get this packaging open and take a look. Here is Blastwave in robot mode, and he actually has a surprising amount of articulation. This is unusual. A forward and backward swivel in the upper arms, and that's mostly because of the transformation. But he also has a soft ratchet in the shoulder, which is unfortunately a little cut off because of these little horns on his arms. But it does allow a good amount of swiveling there. He's got a ball joint, which is actually fairly rare nowadays. A ball joint in the hip, and I'm just realizing now that he has a swivel in the upper shoulder as well to better take advantage of that of those pieces. Also, the chest piece does open up for you to and you actually revealing that these upper arm, the shoulder bits, are actually ball joints. So you can get all kinds of different poses with these pieces. It's actually really cool. But there we go. You can see upper thigh is on a ball joint, as you may have seen from when I was fiddling around with this character, moving him around in different poses. He has a face on his chest, and he also has a tiny version of that face on his butt. He has two accessories, the first being this kind of pretty gorgeous katana. It's like that nice military green, like most of the figure, as well as a nice silver. It has a peg to store, I believe, on the side of his treads, you'll see in a moment, as well as kind of an interesting handle that's not very common to have a handle like that. He also comes with a cannon. It's a double barrel cannon that allows the cannon to swivel up and down. Pretty nice. It is shown on the package to be plugged in onto his back, like so, on here. you can either plug it in like that to have like a backpack, or if you want, you can flip the guns up. You can flip the guns up to have them going over the shoulders. I really like the look of this. That looks pretty dang cool to me. Unfortunately, that does show the underside of the guns, so it looks good from the front, not as much from the back. But there's also a hole, so if you really wanted to, you could technically plug the guns into the back of his head. If you wanted that, like, really shoulder cannon look, though I honestly think that looks a little silly. It'd basically make him, I mean, I know he's mute, but it'd make him deaf as well. But because the way since it's a 5mm peg, you can also just hold the guns in his hand. It's not the most amazing looking double barrel cannon ever, but I mean, it's not terrible. Personally, I like the look of plugged into the back with the barrels pointing up, and then if you want, you can always angle them forward. That's, I think, in my opinion, the best look, and but I mean, you're welcome to do whatever you want with your own toy. These shoulders are kind of weird. I'm not used to shoulders having that much articulation. For comparison, here he is next to I think he's technically his wave mate, but another fellow bounty hunter, Alpine Strike Drift. They're roughly about the same size. Drift looks maybe a hair or two taller than Blastwave if you're not counting the cannons. Oh, and actually, by the way, if you have the cannons like this, you actually can go all the way forward and articulate them all the way down. It does run into a little bit of a clearance issue on the way, but you know, assuming yours doesn't come unpegged right away, you can actually get some pretty decent poses. Here is Blastwave in his vehicle mode. As you'll notice, he's a tank, but he's missing something, and that something in particular is of course his gun. And it plugs into the same place here, and because of the design of the gun, you can technically get some up and down articulation. I don't know why you'd point it down anyway, but you can get some upward articulation pointing it straight up, and if you wanted to, you can even point it backward. That doesn't really look that good of a tank mode, considering you have fists, but I mean, that's not too bad. This is a pretty nice tank mode. That's pretty nice. I like that. It's cool. The treads have some nice details from the Galvatron mold that they carried over, and there are little green wheels on all four ends, and of course you can see the chest face. It's a nice vehicle mode, and it rolls decently. I'd probably say the hardest part of this was connecting the arms together, just because the way the shoulders collapse was a little new to me. There is a number of ports you can store the sword on. The picture on the box shows you storing the sword on the back of his head, pointing forward. I don't think that looks very attractive, just to have a sword sticking out. You can flip it around, of course. This blends in a little better. I mean, it's not pretty, but it blends in a little better. You can, of course, store the swords on the hands, as well as there are open ports on both treads for you to store it on the thigh. It's not flush, but I mean, it doesn't look terrible. It's better weapon storage than Blitzwing has. Jeez, Blitzwing. Okay, you know, I want to be clear. I mentioned this in my Blitzwing video. I love the robot mode, I love the tank and the jet, but the transformation for Blitzwing is so stupid. This is a really nice transformation, and also, the tank has a full 360-degree turn. So you have a lot of posability in the shoulders and upper arms, which is great. You have a phenomenal tank mode. This is, I mean, I know it's a futuristic tank, but it looks pretty nice. For comparison, here he is next to War for Cybertron Deluxe Class Megatron. You can definitely see that by comparison, Megatron is a little bit, is actually, well, not a little bit, he's a bit bulkier. That's mostly because of those big panels that make up his feet, though. For the most part, Megatron is kind of basically just a gray pancake. Though, I mean, they're roughly equivalent in size. I like this figure. I was really, Blastwave was an impulse buy for me, but I'm really glad I bought him. Thank you all for watching. Until next time, I've been Metagross Freak, and I'm actually considering maybe getting the Bludgeon figure, because I like this mold, and I kind of want a repaint of it. We'll see. Let's see if I can find a Bludgeon. It's impossible to find figures that aren't wind blades in San Jose. Hopefully I'll be able to find one. Alright, cool. I'll see you next time.